So my lesson for number sense and numeration is called First Past the Post, and it comes with a rather obscure image of a horse race, and I will explain both the title and the image in a little bit. The focus of this lesson is the idea of proportionality and proportional thinking. When you take a look at the curriculum, you find that proportionality is not explicitly present in many areas of the document. Now, it's an older document. It was written in 2005, and more recently, the ministry has recognized that proportional reasoning is very important and needs to be brought to the fore of our attention in teaching and learning mathematics. It turns out that proportional reasoning is present across all strands and throughout all grades of the mathematics we teach, and so it's very important that students develop an understanding of this and are able to think in this way. So there is a problem, however, with how proportionality is taught often, or rather how mathematics in general is taught often, but we'll have an example of it here in proportionality. Here is a specific expectation, a grade 8 expectation, and regarding proportionality. Students will solve problems involving proportions using concrete materials, drawings, and variables. Now that's a good expectation. My problem here is with the sample that is provided after the expectation. The ratio of stone to sand in hard fast concrete is 2 to 3. How much stone is needed if 15 bags of sand are used? Quite honestly, I'm not sure how many students care about this. I'm trying to envision a student's reaction to seeing 15 bags of sand sitting there at the side of the road. Would that student start to wonder, hey, I wonder how much stone we would need to make concrete out of this? Is it proportional to anything? I just don't see that happening. This is not a question that is going to engage students in any way at all. Neither is this one, I think. A snail can move I inches in m minutes. At this rate, how many feet can it move in h hours? I don't think many students will wonder this when they come upon a snail on the sidewalk. So we really want to engage students with mathematics. Now, I chose the snail question particularly for this video because it reminded me of many years ago. I was driving to work, listening to CBC radio as I often do, and I heard this interview. And the fellow who was being interviewed was this fellow right here, David Stocker. And he had written this book, Math That Matters, which was new at the time. This was about 2008 or so. And this is a very interesting resource, and it changed the way that I think about student engagement with mathematics. Each of the lessons in this book uses mathematics as a tool to examine social justice issues. And just think of a social justice issue as probably in this book, whether it's world hunger or overpopulated shelters, access to services for individuals, a lot of things. The particular lesson we're going to use today is lesson 37, The Winner Takes It All. So I've based my lesson, First Past the Post, on this lesson. And this lesson examines Canada's electoral system, which is called Single Member Plurality System, or more commonly known as First Past the Post, which brings us back to the image at the start of the presentation. Our electoral system is very much like a horse race. The first person past the post, or the person with the most votes, gets everything, gets the seat in the House. And all the other candidates get next to nothing. So it's very much like a horse race in that way. In his lesson, Stocker highlights the fact that in the current system, the number of seats that a party wins is disproportionate to its share of the vote. And we're going to see an example of this in the next slide. He suggests that proportional representation is a fairer system because the number of seats a party gets is proportionate to its share of the vote. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking that my purpose in this video is to increase student engagement with mathematics, and I'm using Canadian politics to do it. And some might think that's counterintuitive, but I've done this before, several times before actually, and I actually do manage to achieve engagement through outrage. Students, once they understand how our system works, um, become they become quite concerned and angry actually at the fact that the distribution of seats is not fair as they see it. Now, I don't want to say that first past the post is wrong and proportional representation is right. That's what sort of comes out at the beginning of the lesson. That's where their minds go. And as we investigate the two systems, we find out that neither is perfect, but neither is all wrong either. But at the beginning, the hook is the hook draws on students' natural sense of fairness and right and wrong. And at the beginning, most of them do see first past the post is not fair, and they want to fix the problem. And that's the engagement. Let's take a look at this in an example of Ontario's most recent election. So in June 2018, we went to the polls, and this is what happened. Here are the results. So we can see that the Progressive Conservatives received 40.5% of the popular vote, but they won well over half the seats in provincial parliament. They got 76 out of 124, or in other words, 61.3 of the seats. Students, once they understand this, many of them they see that this is not fair. Doesn't mean that they're right about it, but their feeling is it's not fair, and so they want to investigate, they want to learn, they want to see other alternatives, and that's the hook for the learning of the math. Students often also see that if, in this case, the PCs are getting perhaps more than their fair share of seats, that somewhere somebody is getting less than their fair share of seats. So further investigation reveals that the Liberals won almost 20% of the votes, but look at how many seats they won, or the percentage of seats that they won. You know, how is that fair is a question that the students would ask. And this is a great way for students to see proportionality, because they're investigating not only what a disproportionate system, first past the post, but they're also investigating a proportionate system. So they can see the difference, and that really helps them understand the whole idea of what proportionality really is. And then they can do the math, and they can find out, well, in a proportional representation system, what would the PCs get? What does 40.5% of the seats look like? In that case, the PCs would have 50 seats. And now another very interesting thing about this is that under a proportional representation system, in this case, the PCs would go from having a majority government to a minority government, and that changes things completely, because as we know, in a majority government, the PCs can pass legislation much more easily and without cooperation with other parties. In a minority government, they need to have support of at least one other party. And so that changes things for everyone in the province. And students in grade 7, 8, they understand this. They understand that their lives are impacted by this subtle difference in government. And again, that makes them become more engaged with and interested in the math that is being taught. So that is a summary of the mathematics that will be looked at in this lesson.